In the 18 years between the demise of World Championship Wrestling and the inception of All Elite Wrestling, if you wanted an alternative to the WWE way, your only option stateside was total non-stop action. That's because it's an extremely difficult endeavour trying to create a viable national wrestling promotion due to a litany of challenges and obstacles. Many have tried, but few have actually succeeded. In fact, by the mid-2010s, one of TNA's founders tried to catch lightning in a bottle for a second time. The plan was to launch a national wrestling promotion that produced weekly television while promising to innovate the way pro wrestling was presented on TV. But what ensued was a low-impact startup, bullish plans that went unrealized, a confusing merger, and messy legal action. Oh, and gold. Can't forget about the gold. I'm Jack from Cultaholic Wrestling, and this is the true story of Global Force Wrestling. From birth, Jeff Jarrett was already ingrained in the world of pro wrestling. His father Jerry had been wrestling for about 2 years when Jeff came along, and in his own childhood, Jerry Jarrett sold event programs outside the venues for promoters Roy Welsh and Nick Gulas of the NWA Mid-America territory. Jerry later worked in promotional capacities during his teenage years, learning the intricacies of wrestling's business side. Of the entire Jarrett family, it was Jerry's mother Christine that had made the biggest impact on the business to that point. She began as a ticket vendor in Nashville in the late 40s and later assumed greater responsibilities, becoming a respected and formidable promoter for Welch and Gulas in Indiana and in Kentucky. In 1977, in his mid-30s, Jerry founded the popular Memphis-based Continental Wrestling Association. By '89, Jerry consolidated his Memphis group with the dying embers of the Von Erich's world-class territory in Dallas, thereby forming the United States Wrestling Association. By that time, his son Jeff was a 3-year wrestling pro, first cutting his teeth as a referee. Jerry got out of promoting in the mid-90s, but by 2001, following the death of WCW, he was coaxed back into the game. Alongside son Jeff and executive Bob Ryder, Jerry helped concoct what would become TNA, a Nashville-based alternative to WWE that ran weekly Wednesday night pay-per-views. The Jarretts were TNA's primary owners, but not for long. Deep financial distress plagued the company during its opening months for several reasons. TNA was in danger of going under, but they were saved by Robert and Janice Carter, owners of the Dallas-based Panda Energy. The Carters bought 71% interest in TNA to keep the company afloat, and their daughter Dixie, an old friend of Jeff's, took over the day-to-day operations. Jerry Jarrett himself would be gone within months due to a falling out with head writer Vince Russo. Jeff was one of TNA's most pushed stars for the next 4 years before settling into a featured role for the remainder of the 2000s. By the end of 2013, amid shake-ups and rampant disorganization, Jeff himself, now largely an executive, resigned from the company that he had helped co-found. One of Jeff Jarrett's last acts was to attempt to buy TNA back from the Carter family. His partner in the deal was successful country star Toby Keith, whose connection to TNA dated back to the inaugural event where he and Jarrett had a physical altercation. Ultimately, Jarrett and Keith backed out of the deal, reportedly after Bob Carter was adamant that his daughter Dixie be guaranteed some sort of role in TNA's continuation, but Dixie was by now widely despised by the fans and a number of disgruntled performers. With taking TNA back now not an option, Jarrett went on to found a new company. On April 7th, 2014, Jeff Jarrett and wife Karen were depicted in a press release announcing the formation of Global Force Wrestling. Very few details came with that initial release. It was noted that Jarrett was scouting numerous domestic and international promotions for untapped talent. The usual buzzword bingo was also present, as Jarrett was quoted as saying GFW would deliver, quote, a multi-platform innovative brand that will engage fans in ways they've never experienced. He also said the company would deliver, quote, a fresh perspective inside the business that fans have been clamoring for. The following week, it was revealed that Jarrett had a significant business partner in David Broom, a veteran producer of reality TV. Broom's most noteworthy hit was NBC's weight loss reality series, The Biggest Loser. And the involvement of Broom hinted at something more reality-based than the TNA and WWE products of the day, which makes sense given his field of expertise. He and Jarrett were reportedly promoting both traditional wrestling programming and unscripted fare to prospective networks. The stated plan was to produce, quote, 52 weeks of content a year, not unlike what GFW's theoretical competitors were also doing. Also hired was former TNA personality and staff member Scott D'Amore, who was named Vice President of International Relations. Later that summer, Global Force announced working agreements with a number of international promotions, including Mexico's AAA, Rev Pro in the UK, numerous groups in Australia, and most impressively, New Japan Pro Wrestling. And the Global Force New Japan connection did pay one particular dividend, as GFW helped present Wrestle Kingdom 9 on American pay-per-view. The US broadcast of the heralded Tokyo Dome card featured Jim Ross and Matt Striker on commentary and drew upwards of 15,000 domestic buys. It was an eventful show as well, one in which Kenny Omega won the IWGP Junior Heavyweight title and Hiroshi Tanahashi retained the IWGP Heavyweight title against Kazuchika Okada. It still holds up very well to this day. Aside from that beneficial bit of synergy though, there wasn't really much else to write home about on the Global Force front. Nothing resembling an American TV deal had been announced, nor were there any formal signings to the roster. As 2014 drew to a close, Global Force made zero headlines outside of its connection with New Japan. And the same could be said for the early months of 2015. It wasn't until the first week of May, a full 13 months after that inaugural press release, did GFW start making significant announcements. At a press conference in Las Vegas on May 6th, Jarrett rolled out a number of names that will be part of the first ever Global Force locker room. They included former WWE mid-carders Chris Masters and Justin Gabriel, Ring of Honor powerhouse Moose, Thea Trinidad, the future Zelina Vega, Lance Archer and Davey Boy Smith Jr. of the Killer Elite Squad, Seiya Sanada fresh off his recent exodus to TNA, and Bullet Club cornerstones Carl Anderson and Doc Gallows. Also revealed was the group's color commentator, veteran UFC trash talker Chael Sonnen, who not only understood the verbal side of professional wrestling, drawing from it in his fighting career itself, but arguably also the most well-known person associated with GFW to this point. If Jarrett and Global Force had their way though, that wouldn't have been the case. There would have been maybe bigger names than Chael Sonnen, at least to a wrestling audience. Reports emerged that month that GFW had attempted to sign none other than Bill Goldberg. Now, Goldberg hadn't set foot inside a wrestling ring since WrestleMania 20, that calamitous match against Brock Lesnar, but he would certainly have been a feather in the cap of the upstart promotion. However, for apparent financial reasons, the sides couldn't reach an agreement. In addition, GFW announced dates for its TV tapings. Despite not having any sort of deal in place, GFW planned to tape matches in July, August, and October at the Orleans Arena in Las Vegas for a program that would be called Amped. Before those tapings, GFW also announced a summer live event tour to run at minor league baseball stadiums. Oh, and there would also be, of course, a 6-sided ring, complete with brand-oriented green ropes. Jarrett had been inspired by AAA to bring the hexagonal combat zone to TNA in 2004, and clearly his affinity for it hadn't subsided over the ensuing decade. The first Global Force Wrestling event was held in Jackson, Tennessee, at a ballpark capable of holding 6,000 in the stands and much more at field level surrounding the ring. But as you might have suspected, GFW came nowhere close to filling the venue. In fact, the most optimistic attendance report printed in The Observer claimed that approximately 375 fans attended the show. Poor advances, along with no TV with which to promote, made it clear that this house show tour was gonna be a hard sell. In addition to those prior talent announcements, other relevant names on the card included the Best Friends tag team, Sonjay Dutt, and even Jim Cornette in his classic managerial role. In the main event, Gallows and Anderson defeated a team called the New Heavenly Bodies, whom Jim Cornette derided for being inferior to the originals he'd once guided. A similar card was held in Knoxville, which was of course Cornette's old Smoky Mountain stomping grounds. That happened the next day and only drew 500. Over the weekends ahead, GFW brought in quality talents to enhance its cards. Names like Colt Cabana, Shelton Benjamin, Nick Aldis, Tommaso Ciampa, Johnny Gargano, Santana Garrett, Allison Kay, Eric Young, and even the Young Bucks, who were among the most sought-after non-WWE acts of the time, all populated those early GFW forays. In the run-up to the first set of TV tapings, GFW revealed the promotion's 4 championship belts. The global title was to be its world title equivalent, while the tag team and women's belts are pretty self-explanatory. There was also a Next Gen Championship, a secondary title that seemed to pay homage to the X Division Championship TNA had created 13 years earlier. Each of those titles would be immediately fought for at the first ever Amped tapings on Friday, July 24th, 2015. Before 3,000 fans at Las Vegas's Orleans Arena, many of them reportedly comps given out by the venue's adjacent hotel, GFW unrolled a card of 8 matches. And most of these were tournament bouts for the organization's 4 belts. With Chael Sonnen and MMA announcer Cyrus Fees on the call, the likes of Aldis, Bobby Roode, Kevin Cross, not yet Karrion Kross, Sonada, Sonjay Dutt, Mickie James, Christina Von Eerie, the Bollywood Boys, and others got to work making a push towards those GFW championships. And the show was a hot one according to many attendee accounts. A number of angles were run to set up the following month's tapings, and match quality varied, but a variety of talents had moments of shine. Still, there was a lingering sense of doubt in the air. GFW's business plan was to film many hours of TV and then attempt to sell its product to a cable outlet, which wasn't likely to work. Either you sell a TV home for your promotion before putting out your first show, or, less cost effectively, you buy airtime to run shows on. But in this scenario, GFW was hoping to win a significant network over with an existing product, a strategy that hadn't really worked to this point in wrestling history. A flirtation with TNA didn't really move the needle all that much either. Jarrett briefly returned to his old organization in 2015 as part of a GFW invasion angle, which is kind of like getting invaded by a country that has yet to even ratify a constitution. With control of TNA at stake, Jarrett's stable lost a lethal lockdown match to a quintet of TNA stars. But they soldiered on with a massive double taping at the Orleans again on August 21st. Bobby Roode, Eric Young, Shelton Benjamin, the Good Brothers, Trevor Lee, and others all took part in the various tournaments before 2,100 fans, with PJ Black, aka the former Justin Gabriel, becoming the first GFW Next Gen champion. But it just felt like GFW was kinda already running in circles. There was reportedly talk that GFW was taping for international outlets, but no deals had been announced. The other 3 inaugural champions were crowned on October 23rd. Christina Von Eerie became the first women's champion, the Bollywood Boys became the first tag champions, and Nick Aldis became the group's first global title holder. And then, well, not much. There was a 2-show UK tour headlined by Aldis that included Doug Williams, the then 20-year-old Tony Storm, and 18-year-old Tyler Bate. But those would be GFW's final shows for 2015. And in 2016, things got a little bit bleaker. The group held only 16 shows across the calendar year, most of which were co-branding endeavors with various American indies in smaller cities. It doesn't really sound like a promotion on the verge of a national breakout. In fact, GFW might have just faded into the ether at this point, if not for one truly unforgettable business move. I am, of course, talking about Global Force Gold. In April 2016, a video was shown to the world in which Jeff Jarrett promoted what looked for all the world like a Ponzi scheme. You apparently were supposed to send money to a German company called Carrot Bars in exchange for little denominations of gold. Then, following the marketing plan, you make money by getting your friends to send money in, and it branches out from there. You know, like the multiple levels of some sort of pyramid. As the head of Cultaholic's legal department, depending on which days the arrow on the chore wheel points at my name, I'm of the firm belief that none of this seems the least bit legal. And the fact that the video has since been almost entirely wiped from the internet like a bad childhood memory kind of speaks to that. As laughable as it was also a pretty dire sign that GFW probably wasn't on strong financial ground. After 2 years of quasi-existence, 3 TV tapings, and no broadcast deal in sight, it looked like GFW was kind of limping towards its grave. But fear not, because salvation was coming. Salvation from a company that required its own salvation, actually. In January 2017, Anthem Sports and Entertainment bought majority interest in what had become a quite bullet-riddled total non-stop action. The promotion was now rebranded as Impact Wrestling, and Jarrett came back on board as a consultant. That April, Karen Jarrett appeared on Impact to announce a merger between Impact and GFW. In late June, Anthem issued a press release confirming that it had acquired Global Force Wrestling. Jeff Jarrett joined the conglomerate's board of managers and was named Chief Creative Officer, and as part of the deal, he then sold his remaining Impact shares to Anthem. Following this consolidation, Impact rebranded itself as Global Force Wrestling, marking the promotion's second name change in 6 months. Along the way, 3 of GFW's 4 belts quickly changed hands on Impact programming. The tag belts went to Santana and Ortiz, who unified them into TNA's titles. Sienna, aka Allysin Kay, won GFW's women's belt and then unified it with the Knockouts title she won from Rosemary. Alberto El Patron won the global title and fused it with the Impact World title he'd taken from Bobby Lashley. And as for the Next Gen belt, that title changed hands twice before the merger. Sonjay Dutt won it from PJ Black at 2015's WrestleCade and then lost it 1 year later to Cody Rhodes at the 2016 WrestleCade. But the title was abandoned in June 2017 after Cody's brief TNA run had ended. However, barely 2 months into this co-opt venture kind of thing, the wheels began falling off. A big shocker, I know. In early September, it was announced that Jarrett was taking a leave of absence from GFW, effective immediately. It's not quite clear what the final straw was, but apparently there had been vehement disagreements behind the scenes for some time. Additionally, Jarrett had apparently fallen out with Anthem headman Ed Nordholm. Maybe he tried convincing him to buy some gold, maybe. I don't know. Over the weeks that followed, Global Force began reverting back to its Impact branding, marking the promotion's 3rd name change in less than 9 months. On October 23rd, Impact announced that its business relationship with Jarrett and GFW was over and the promotion restored its total Impact identity. Jarrett retained the rights to all things GFW as the paperwork to complete the transfer had apparently not yet been finalised. But even with all of this going on, GFW matches did air as part of Impact's one-night-only taped pay-per-view series. So at least Amped did get broadcast somewhere. Jarrett and Global Force went on to file several legal actions against Anthem. In a February 2019 filing, Jarrett claimed that Impact had erased the master tapes of GFW's 2015 TV tapings. Jarrett was also apparently trying to get back the rights to his name and likeness, which Anthem apparently now held. A mistrial was declared in July 2020, but Jarrett and Anthem reached a settlement in January 2021. Post-Impact, Global Force Entertainment would go on to produce the inaugural StarCast in 2018, ahead of the first ever All In. The company also produced NWA's 70th anniversary show that October, and subsequently, Jarrett rejoined WWE as a backstage staff member and occasional performer. And since then, Global Force has been relegated to the dustbin of history. There's always a fair amount of skepticism whenever a new wrestling promotion rears its head. In the years since TNA's peak, only All Elite Wrestling has made anything resembling a major dent in the United States. It helped that a fertile market and a hungry audience were conducive for a WWE alternative to gain traction. And also beneficial was the fact that Tony Khan got executives at Warner Media on board long before its maiden event. But Global Force Wrestling had none of that going for it. Coming at a time when WWE was down from its promotional peak, though not as polarizing as they would become, the fans may have been interested in an alternative, but it would have required a very strong approach. But after its first announcement, GFW went mostly quiet. No roster was set, no TV deals were announced, and after 1 year, all GFW had to show for its hype were tentative connections to established promotions, and had helped broker an American broadcast for that Wrestle Kingdom for New Japan. In year 2, the roster reveal was underwhelming, the house shows were sparsely attended, they ran TV tapings but had no outlet to air the shows. And for all the talk of this reality-based new product and everything, GFW kinda just looked like just another promotion once everybody saw it. Then came year 3, where GFW's output were co-branded indie events in cities most people would never have heard of, and the regrettable Global Force Gold scheme. It wasn't until GFW was 3 years old that something truly important happened. They merged with an established, albeit wounded promotion with some semblance of credibility in TNA, and even that was a very short-lived lifeline. Global Force Wrestling is the story of a promotion that simultaneously failed to gain momentum and then failed to capitalize on what little momentum it did develop. They were, unfortunately, just another grandiose promotional failure in a very long history of them. But between running TV tapings without a TV deal, participating in an apparent pyramid scheme, and somehow convincing an established promotion to merge with you and adopt your branding for 3 months, it's safe to say that no failed promotion was ever quite like Global Force Wrestling. I've been Jack from Cultaholic, and that was the true story of Global Force Wrestling. Thank you very much for watching this video, and I'll see you very soon.